What is up, guys? It is Joe. We are back. We're talking about the Cats today as K-State added their second player through the transfer portal, CJ Jones. We talked about him a couple weeks ago on the channel as someone to keep an eye on. Today, that came true. We saw K-State move quickly. We saw them move effectively, and they got their guy, beating teams like Creighton, beating teams like Illinois. It sounded like a couple of teams in the Big 12 as well were interested in CJ Jones. The dude was a quick and fast riser in the transfer portal. The dude had a lot of different offers from people and people trying to get his services. Obviously, K-State was the main team to focus on. They were able to fend off some different offers, and they got their guy, CJ Jones. Now, I've talked about CJ a couple times on the channel, but today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to try something different. As I talk about CJ, you'll see some highlights pop up of his game. I'm sure you've already seen it by now, but if you haven't, the next couple minutes will feature some highlights from CJ Jones as I talk about the addition. Shout out to the Portal Report, their YouTube channel. They do a great job. Shout out to my guy George over at the Portal Report. They do a great job. Be sure and check their channel out. For any and all requests related to the transfer portal to see anybody's highlights, that's the place to go. So I'm going to start rolling that here now as we talk about Mr. CJ Jones. Now, right off the bat, you see his ability. I mean, I know the guy has shown ability at UIC, and people are going to look at that and say, well, that's not the Big 12. Are you worried about a jump up? Not really. Not really. Some guys you can just kind of tell when they jump off the screen. That's the type of player CJ Jones is. In this video, we're going to talk about stats, some different things he's done in his last couple of games, as well as talk about what Coach Tang said about CJ Jones specifically, as well as Dug McDaniel. In this video, he was on an interview. I'll talk about that here in a sec, but let's start off with his numbers. He averaged 11.4 points last season at UIC, 3.5 rebounds per game, and 4.8 assists per game. That's 65th in the country. He shot 42.5% from the field. That's a big deal. And from three, he was a pretty natural shooter, finishing off the season just under 38% from three with 37.8%. And as you can see in some of these videos, the dude has no shyness from pulling up from deep. He's able to dribble and penetrate. He's able to get to the cup. He operates in ball screens a lot. But overall, the dude just stands out whatever you ask him to do. Whether it's a catch and shoot scenario, whether it's a dribble drive scenario, whether it's passing. I mean, you got to love the guy's 30% assist rate. That is a huge deal. And K-State really didn't have anybody capable of that type of passing last season. I mean, you look through some of these numbers. 16, 14, and 3 against Drake, the 14 being assists. 17, 10, and 3 against Evansville. He's had some really, really nice numbers down the back half of the season. Against SIU, he had 15, 6, and 4. So the dude's kind of set for that triple-double route, so to speak. A couple of different games here to rattle off. 16, 8, and 5, 17, 7, and 6, 18, 8, and 3. The dude can do whatever you ask of him, whether it's scoring, whether it's passing, whether it's defending. You see a lot of that and more, so it's good to see the addition as is. Now, I think what Coach Tang's trying to do, and I don't mean to say trying because he's effectively doing that. The goal of this team, and I'll talk a little bit more specifically about it, but every single person on the court, whether that's the 1, the 2, the 3, 4, 5, anyone on the starting court can be your best player on any given night. That's the idea. And it's not to say that there isn't one guy that's going to stand up above the rest, or two guys that are going to stand up above the rest, a la a Marquise Noel, a Keontae Johnson. But Coach Tang understands that given a matchup, it doesn't matter if it's CJ Jones, if it's Dug McDaniel, if it's Day-Day Ames. Obviously, there's some parity at the bigs right now, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But every single one of those guys can go out and get you 20-plus on a given night in Big 12 basketball. That's what you love to see. CJ Jones, I know some people have talked about the fit and some different things, but before I get into that, let me read you what Coach Tang had to say, because I think that's going to give us a little bit more background on the type of player he is. But starting off talking about this, the first question is basically he did this interview and he was asked, hey, talk about CJ Jones. That's the addition. Coach Tang basically said, we are fired up about CJ because he's a product of East St. Louis High School, where he was a teammate of one of our players right now, Buddy Rich. Buddy was a lead recruiter on that one. He was absolutely fired up about the opportunity to play with his former teammate. And quick interjection from me, if you haven't seen it, there's a video going around of Buddy and CJ playing with each other in high school. Those dudes are ballers. They still are ballers, and that'd be an awesome dynamic duo to see on the court. Coach Tang continued by saying, CJ is a 6'5" guard, and he played the point at UIC. He's a great decision maker. He can play multiple positions, he shoots the ball at a high clip, and he can be an all-conference type guy over the next couple of years. He's got those measurables, 6'5", 6'7" wingspan, and he's going to have the ability one day to make a lot of money playing the game as he continues to develop. Now, the next question, I thought this is one to toss in there. Even though it's not 100% just about CJ, I wanted to toss it in there because I think it's a really good point. Now, what is the goal in the portal and what players are you looking for? That was the idea that was pitched to Jerome Tang. He says, we want competitive guys with high basketball IQs. And the other thing we needed was bringing in good decision makers because we turned the ball over way too much last year. It was really a miracle that we were able to win as much as we were able to and be in as many close games as we were with how high our turnover rate was. The great thing about both Dug and CJ is that they both take care of the basketball. They have low turnover rates, high assist rates, high IQs, and they're extremely competitive. With that, we need to add some more weapons around them. We're looking for some bucket getters. We're fired up about who we're in on and who we're recruiting because I believe that we're going to put together a roster that gives us a chance to compete for a Big 12 championship and a national title. Great stuff from Coach Tang on that. Shout out to the ESPN Central Texas dudes on that. But let's talk about the idea that they're adding bucket getters. CJ Jones is a bucket getter, don't get me wrong, but looking at him as a primary ball handling guy, that's huge. Whether that's 1, 2, or 3, Coach Tang seems to be going to that identity of how does Baylor win national championships? You know, your 1, 2, and 3 can play whatever position you need them to. One can be the primary ball handler. The other two can play off ball. That's what K-State looks at. I mean, Data Ames, Dug McDaniel, CJ Jones, all 3 of those guys can play on ball or off ball, whatever you need them to do, and make high-level decisions. That's big. Now it becomes about the supporting pieces around them because those 3 are really great players and all have NBA aspirations. But your bigs right now are very depleted. We don't know about the status of Arthur Kaluma. I assume based off the way the staff's recruiting, we're probably not going to see Art return, but who knows? We don't have any centers on our roster, any type of big man, realistically outside of Dave, and Dave is a 4 as well as a wing at times. So K-State needs to get cracking in that sense. But you start looking for bucket getters. That's the way Coach Tang talked about it. You look for bucket getters, not just guys that can shoot, because that's the difference. Some guys can shoot, some guys can put the ball in the hole and actually make it. That's the difference. How do you get to that spot? So we're going to need a couple of bigs. You're going to need a guy. Obviously, we've talked about both Omar Ballo and Cliff Amori on the channel, and I'm hoping for potential with both. We'll see what happens. Obviously, not both at the same team, but I'm hoping that there's a chance to land either or. That's a big part. But you're going to need to add some players at that 4 or 5 position. Obviously, having a guy like Buddy is huge in the depth spot because you can have him jump into that 4 and really hit the ground running. But there's going to be questions to fill out. There's going to be different things. But the idea with CJ Jones is you got a really hot commodity in the transfer portal, a great decision maker. I mean, he's the best passer in Manhattan since Marquise Noel. Dug McDaniel is going to be right up there with him. But you have 2 guys that make good decisions, have low turnover rates, and high assist rates. That's huge. Now, how do we add to that? You have 3 more roster spots left. I would argue it's going to be 1 wing and 2 bigs. We'll see how that works out if nobody else moves on the roster. But as it's been said a couple of times, and it's been mentioned before that there's now 6 guards on the team, I would be surprised if at least one guy didn't hit the portal trying to find some more playtime. But as it sits right now, I think K-State's plan's got to be to attack the bigs, and then you get a solid scoring wing. You have a great roster. Think about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. You get a guy, Dug McDaniel, at your 1, Data Ames at your 2, or whatever you want to do in that situation. CJ Jones at your 3, he's long, he's athletic, he can do whatever you need. And then your typical 4 or 5 guys, you're going to need bigs that are capable of scoring and athletic rim running bigs. That puts all this together. So you get the right pieces for your offense, you get the right guys in the locker room. This absolutely has a chance to be really, really great. But as it sits right now, K-State has added 2 players, CJ Jones and Dug McDaniel, and they're looking for a 3rd soon. We've talked about Baba Miller. I would absolutely love to see that commitment. That's a guy that puts a great piece in the starting 5 or even coming off the bench. Whatever you ask of these guys, that's a great depth piece. So K-State is going to continue to bang the drum and get the right guys to Manhattan. Let's see which people stick. But as it sits right now, I just wanted to make a video to talk about CJ Jones and what he brings to the team. I love the fit. I love it. Immediate reaction, I think he's going to be a hell of a player. And the best part is he's young. He's a sophomore. He's got time to develop, and he'll have some eligibility left. You know, you look at the roster, everybody on this roster, it feels like has eligibility. Obviously, David Gasson doesn't, but everybody has some multiple years ahead. That's huge. That's what you love to see. A youth movement. We're also bringing in good, talented scoring people. So something to keep in mind, but like Coach Tang said, they're looking for bucket getters. Who fits the role of a bucket getter? Those are the people we're going after. So I appreciate each and every one of you. I totally forgot to mention to subscribe. It is what it is. But if you're interested in subscribing, we have a ton of K-State content on this channel. And I talk basketball, football. It's been a lot of basketball lately. We're getting back to football here later this week. But I appreciate each and every one of you watching. And at 2,000 subs, we're giving away a lavender quarter zip. Don't forget that. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I will talk to you soon. Go Cats.